In the message line, I'm simply going to change the x3 value, which is the third point we clicked, to -20, and this will make our arc uniform on both sides. Now with the selection tool, I'm going to select that arc we just drew. And with my shortcut, I'm going to open up the pen palette again, and I'm going to change colors of this arc, just to keep it different from the other colors. Now what we want to do is we want to extrude this shape along that arc, and for that we're going to use the Swept Solid tool. We also want to change its setting to Sweep Rigid so that it stays straight on both sides. Now we need to select all the parts of this profile, and there's an easy way to do this using the Select Chain, which is Apple tilde, the shortcut menu. But notice our message line says Select Profile to Sweep, Shift = Extend. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'm going to click this top line. Then I'm going to tap the Apple and the tilde key, and notice how it follows the chain around that profile, but it also selects two other lines that are connected to it. So I'm going to keep Shift held down and I'm going to deselect those two other lines. With the profile selected, now I'm going to pick curves for the sweep path, which is just that arc. Once I select that, it sweeps that profile along the arc. And this creates a nice smooth extrusion along that arc. Now I'll turn the work plane off, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to blend these edges on the bottom of this part, which I could have done to the wireframe originally, but this time I'll choose to use the radial blend tool. So I want to put a blend right here, but I need to switch to wireframe view so I can see it. And with my radius set to 0.5, I'll click that first edge, then I'll change my radius to 1 and click the outer edge. Now we've got a nice blend in there. When we show that in solid mode, it looks really good. Now I'm going to show you how to edit your part after it's been created. Let's go ahead and show our other solid, and notice the center of the solid is a bit higher than the edge of the solid we just created. What I want to do is move that edge upward but keep the rest of the part where it is. For this I'm going to choose the selection mask, and I'm going to turn off solid selection so I'm only able to click wireframe entities. I can also choose to have this palette collapse to the top so it stays open but it's still there. I'll go ahead and pan over, and I'm going to zoom in to this corner. I'm going to drag a selection around two endpoints and the one line. And where I could just click and drag to pull these lines over, I'm going to use the Move tool and click one point, come out the Y direction and click again. And notice I'm actually just editing wireframe geometry here, but because that wireframe has history, the solid updates as a result. Type in a value of 1, and now notice that this part extends past the center. I'm going to go back into Select Mask, and I'm going to choose Select All, then I'm going to close it down. So if I hop to wireframe mode, notice that my center of that arc piece is now above the origin. Now I want to show you a technique called Overbuilding Geometry. I'm going to cut this solid to be straight, and I'm going to use a line as the cutting tool. But instead of making this line share edges with that solid piece, I'm going to actually make it a little bit longer than it needs to be. I'm also going to go ahead and change the colors. Notice how it extends past the solid a little bit more than it needs to. I'm going to choose the Trim Solid tool, and the message line says pick curve or surface to trim solid. When I pick that curve, little arrows show which direction is going to be cut off. Then I choose the solid to be cut, but notice it's the wrong side. Simply tapping the Option key will reverse the portion that gets removed. So you can see I now have the portion that I want. Let's go ahead and switch back to shaded mode. Now what we want to do is we want to cut out the center portion of the ring of our solid. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Layer Manager, and I'm going to show that Lens 1 layer. Then I'm going to click on my Subtract object, and I'm going to hide it. And there's the circle, and I could use that circle as my cutting object. But remember, since we're overbuilding, I want this geometry to be a little bit bigger than it needs to be. So I'm going to create a new circle from the midpoint, snapping to the quadrant, but just a little bit bigger. Now I've created a new circle that I'll use to cut out that solid. So let's go ahead and turn off our Lens 1 layer. I'm going to switch over to shaded mode, trim solid. I'm going to pick that circle as the cutting object. Then I'm going to click on my solid, and now we have the cutout. Come back over to show all. You can see that that object has a good clearing now. You can also right mouse click an object and choose to show it transparent so you can see how well that object fits in there. Let's turn off transparency again. Now we're going to create the flared edges of this piece. For that, we're going to use the Tangent Point Arc tool. So I'll simply touch the tool to the edge of our ring piece, follow the drafting assistant down until I get well past the part. I'm going to click the first point, then I'm going to come up and click and drag out this arc. Switch back over to wireframe mode. I need to create an identical arc to this to the other side, but there's no point in creating the geometry again when I can just use the mirror tool. Pick beginning of reference line, option equals copy. So I'm going to hold down the option key, and I'm going to click where I know the center of my object is, and I'm going to drag down in the Y direction. This creates an exact mirror copy of the original arc that I drew. Switch back over to shaded mode. We're going to use our trim solid tool again. Pick that mirror copied arc as a cutting line, then click the solid. Click our original arc and cut the solid. Now we have our final shaped piece. Looks good. So I'm simply going to highlight the two solids and click Show Only. Then I'm going to go choose the Union Solid tool. Pick solid to add to. We're going to add to the ring, and then we're going to click the new solid piece, and the two get joined as one. So you see when I click on it, it's all one piece now. I want to make a couple of edits on this part as well. It looks like it's a little too thick, so I'm going to show that wireframe geometry profile again. And I also think it's a little bit too high. I'd prefer not to have it cut into one of those sections. So I want to move that edge down. The first thing we'll do is deal with the thickness. I'm going to use the Show palette. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to click these three lines on my original profile. Those three show up. So I'll hold down the Shift key. What I want to do is I want to drag a selection box around the endpoint, click the line, and drag another selection around the endpoint. I'm going to use the Move tool, and I'm going to go ahead and click the endpoint and click a second point down on the line. Notice how it updates and my part gets shorter because of part history. I can also type in the value for the exact length I want to move it, in this case 0.2. Now we want to show the line we used to cut our part originally. Use the Move tool, and I'm simply going to click 2 points. When that updates, the part is redrawn. The Ashlar-Vellum solid modeling programs support the Illustrator format as an import option. So what we're going to do is we're going to show only our solid part. Then I'm going to show that line that draws down the center point of our part. I'm going to switch over to wireframe viewing mode. Then I'm going to create a new layer. And this time I'm going to call this layer Logo. And I'm also going to click to make this layer the active layer. This way when I import my logo, it'll go to this layer. Let's choose File, Import, and let's choose Adobe Illustrator for the import type. Let's also check the Group Curve Segments and the Join Curve Segments options and click OK. Then we'll browse for our Illustrator file. And I've saved my Illustrator file in version 8. Click OK and it imports my logo. So I'm going to highlight the logo. Then I'm going to go down and I'm going to choose the Move tool. I'm going to click the first point or the reference point in the middle of my logo. And then I'm going to click my ending reference point or where I want it to go on the line. Notice the logo moves. It's also a little too small. So I'm going to use the Expand, Shrink, or Scale tool, as we call it, to make it a bit bigger. So I'm going to pick an anchor point in the middle of my part. Then I'll type in a value of 1.5 and simply hit Enter on the keyboard. That looks a lot better. Let's extrude the logo now so that we can subtract it out of the face of our part. First thing we need to do, though, is we need to move the logo up so that it's inside of the part. I'm going to hold my mouse over the logo and simply tap the C key. This brings up the work plane again, and I'm going to turn the work plane snap back on. Then I'm going to use the Move tool, and I'm going to click 2 points, one where the logo is and one where I want the logo to go, and it moves up to a nice spot in the part. I'm going to turn off the work plane snap. Then I'm going to choose the Extrude Solid tool. The Extrude Solid tool simply wants 2 points as an extrusion, so I will click 2 points, and the logo is extruded. Now we're going to subtract the logo from the face of our part. For that, we're going to use the Subtract Solid tool. So pick the solid that we want to subtract from, and then click the logo. And notice how the logo is now removed from the solid part. Let's switch to shaded mode and show you our final part. We've covered a lot of information in this tutorial, and you may need to go back and watch it a few times before you get everything just right. Good luck and happy modeling.